Good morning and welcome back to Minds Over Magic, the podcast where psychology meets romantasy. I'm Katya, a romantasy reader.
And I'm Catherine, your resident psychologist and psychotherapist.
Today we're analysing chapters 16 to 20 of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Violet's endurance continues to be tested, but she has new allies and some quality sister time.
And from a psychological perspective, we're looking at isolation and connection and how control shows up across these chapters.
Quick reminder, this podcast is intended for mature audiences. Minds Over Magic may include discussion of adult themes, strong language, violence, and sexually explicit content, especially as they relate to the romantasy novels we cover. Listener discretion is advised.
And as per usual, Katya is going to give us a recap of the chapters that we are discussing today.
Absolutely. Right. So, chapter 16. Violet returns from her RSC assessment and heads straight to the archives, where Jasenia is starting to realize that things in Navarre are not as simple as they seem. Even knowing the risk, she still promises to help Violet with her research. The next day, Violet returns to her old poison tricks, but this time it's to help Sloane. A slip of berries here, a touch of powder there, and Sloane's opponent is taken care of. Sloane wins without even realizing she had help. Afterwards, Violet tells Sloane she has Liam's letters and that she'll give them to her, but only if Sloane agrees to train with Imogen.
I love that part, by the way.
1 letter for every week of training. Sloane is furious, but in the end she agrees. At the end of the week, Violet flies to Samara, but Xaden is on 24-hour duty rotation and she misses him again. Another message from Major Varrish. He wants them all in line. Chapter 17. Imogen gives Violet space to talk things through, sensing that she's still keeping her distance from Rhiannon. But she doesn't hold back her opinion, reminding Violet that she has bigger problems than worrying about a guy. And that just because distance works for Xaden doesn't mean it has to work for her. Violet needs her friends just as much as they need her. Meanwhile, border villages begin to receive orders from Navarran leadership to shut their doors to all outsiders. Violet quickly pieces it together. Things in Boromir are getting worse, and people are fleeing. But Markham reframes the situation entirely, claiming that Poromish citizens are the threat. Violet is furious and rushes to the archives, where Jasenia immediately wants her off, reminding her that showing up unannounced is dangerous, and that if they're not careful, they could be caught. Chapter 18. Xaden is back! But the reunion doesn't last long. It quickly turns into another argument where he realizes that Violet has been researching the first 6 and the wards and has brought a scribe into it. He's not just angry, he's worried. Violet is putting herself in danger. Xaden insists on meeting Jasenia for himself to decide whether she can be trusted. On the way to the archives, they run into Nolan, who looks completely exhausted, leaving them both wondering what he's been working on. After meeting Jasenia, Xaden seems reassured at first, but when he realizes that Violet has given her a copy of the Fables of the Baron, the argument starts all over again. This time, Xaden pulls away. He says he needs space, and he leaves on Revolution business. Violet wakes up the next morning to find his things gone. And she's left with the realization that the last words they exchanged were in anger. Chapter 19. Dragons do not answer to the whims of men. Varrish notices that Violet has once again failed to get Andarna to attend flight lessons and moves to punish her for dereliction of duty. But this time, Terran steps in. Having had enough, he grabs Solus by the throat and openly threatens Varrish. And he's not alone. Every dragon on the flight field backs him. Varrish knows that if Terran kills Solus, he dies too, so he relents, even offering Violet an apology. But it's clear that it isn't over. Varrish is angrier than ever. A few days later, Rhiannon walks Violet to the flight field before her departure to Samara. Violet finally tells her about Varrish using her signet as punishment, admitting she kept it from her because she didn't want Rhiannon to get into trouble. The conversation quickly turns into an argument. They clash over the purpose of the gauntlet and the cost of their training, especially the deaths of their friends. And then Rhiannon says what's been building for a while, that Violet has been pulling away, spending her time with Imogen, with Xaden, or alone. This time, Violet snaps. She tells Rhiannon that she has no idea what's really out there, what it's like to hold Liam as he's dying and still have to get up and keep fighting. She almost tells her the truth about the venin, but Terrence stops her with a warning. Before anything more can be said, Varrish approaches to search Violet's bag before her departure. Violet explains that the searches are because leadership will never trust Xaden's name, and finally she admits it. Nothing is all right. Chapter 20. We're back in Samara, and it's sibling time. Mira is now stationed there, and she has every intention of keeping Violet exactly where she can see her. So to avoid losing what little time they have together, Xaden tells Violet to kiss him for show. But the moment quickly turns real, and Mira sees it for what it is. Violet is in love with Xaden. Violet takes the opportunity to ask Mira about the wards. Mira explains that they work like an umbrella. Basgaev is a stem, and the wards form in a dome that stretches out to the surrounding outposts, but only to a certain limit. They can't be extended indefinitely. Violet tries to suggest that Wyvern might be responsible for the destruction in Poromil, but Mira is clearly worried, assuming Violet is exhausted and not thinking clearly. That night, Xaden tells Violet that a group of Paromish civilians tried to cross the border into Navarre and were killed by the infantry. And it's not the first time. Violet admits that she almost told Mira the truth and that Xaden might be right not to trust her with his secrets. But Xaden doesn't react the way she expects. He understands. In return, Violet apologizes for keeping her research about the wards from him, and Xaden makes it clear she's allowed to have secrets, as long as they don't put everything he's been working towards at risk. So, Catherine, what are your first impressions of these chapters? Quite eventful.
A lot to unpack, yes. What stands out for me in these chapters is a Violet isn't just under pressure, she's psychologically saturated. So there's no space left to process what she's carrying. And when someone reaches that point, the issue isn't just stress anymore, it's containment. So she has no safe place to put what she's feeling, so everything starts to build internally. Mm-hmm. And so what we're really watching here is early stages of emotional overload, where isolation, secrecy, and responsibility start to collide in a way that becomes unsustainable.
Yeah, I actually feel really sad for Violet in these chapters because they really paint a picture of forced loneliness. Like, she's trapped in Basgaev, she can't speak openly with her friends, and she's being kept apart from Xaden. And also, like, she has to bite her tongue, right, all the time. And she ends up living entirely in her own head. So my first question for you today is, what happens psychologically when someone has no space to process things out loud? Is it a dangerous place to be?
Yes, I think it's very risky. It's kind of a risky psychological position to be in. When we don't have the space to process things out loud, our thoughts tend to loop rather than resolve. So the brain doesn't metabolize the experience, it just rehearses it. So instead of gaining clarity, we often become more rigid and more overwhelmed and more emotionally reactive. So what's important here that Violet isn't choosing isolation freely. This is constrained isolation. She can't speak openly, and it's a very different place to be psychologically from choosing solitude. So that kind of isolation tends to increase distress rather than to regulate it.
Is it true that when things get overwhelming, we tend to pull away, but that's exactly when we need people the most? As you said, Violet is staying away from her friends to protect them, but sometimes people make that same choice themselves. They isolate. Why do we push people away when we need them the most?
That's a good question. Actually, it's one of those paradoxes in psychology. So when we feel overwhelmed, our instinct often is to withdraw, to reduce the stimulation, and to protect or to avoid burdening other people. But connection is actually one of those primary ways that we regulate emotional intensity. And so the very thing we need most, safe connection, is the thing we're most likely to cut off. So actually, as you see, Violet, she's isolating to protect others, but it's costing her support, which actually she needs to stay grounded.
Mm-hmm. I see. Can isolation ever actually be helpful, or does it usually make things worse? Does it depend on what kind of person you are? Because I'm thinking here about like introverts and extroverts. Like, is it more beneficial for one, more damaging for the other? How does it work?
Well, it can be, but it depends on the function. So healthy solitude allows for reflection and integration. It's chosen, it's temporary, and it still exists within a broader context or connection. Unhealthy isolation, like what we see with Violet, tends to be driven by stress, fear, or necessity. So it disconnects someone from regulation, perspective, and support. So it's not necessarily about introvert versus extrovert. It's about whether isolation is restorative or depleting. And as for Violet, this is clearly depleting.
I see. So it's very individual, essentially.
Yeah, it's not necessarily an introvert or an extrovert thing. Are you missing out on connection with others to save yourself to protect others, but yet it depletes you of what you need, which is the connection.
Yeah. So everybody needs connection.
Connection is restorative, and connection is what people need to continue.
Well, lucky for Violet, she has Imogen. So we love Imogen.
Yeah, we do. We do love Imogen.
And she steps in and gives her space to talk, even if it's just for a few minutes. I love that Imogen has her boundaries as well. She's like, right, I'm giving you this time. We'll walk into class. This is your opportunity. Talk. And I love this moment because everything that Violet has been going over and over in her head is suddenly out in the open. Imogen's reaction is great. She just tells her how it is, that, RSC failing isn't unusual. Mm-hmm. Like, that's exactly what everybody does every year, and that Xaden is complicated, and that was never going to be simple. And she just lays it out so plainly, like it's just an obvious thing, right? And this is, to me, the great example why we need other people. Just everything suddenly becomes clearer. So what's happening psychologically for Violet in that moment? Is she actually releasing some of the pressure just by saying things out loud?
What happens in that moment with Imogen is actually really powerful. When Violet speaks things out loud, she's shifting from internal processing to relational processing. So that changes how our brain holds experience. There's a release of a cognitive load, but also emotional regulation. Being heard, even briefly, helps organize what feels chaotic internally. And Imogen does something very important. She offers perspective without overwhelming her, and she grounds the situation. So yes, even short conversation like that can significantly reduce psychological pressure. And also in Bowen theory, we have triangulation, which is when you talk about something or someone to someone else, you're actually releasing the anxiety of that third party, and the two coming together helps you kind of release that stress or that anxiety around that third party. So in this case, Imogen and Violet, they have a connection already. They already know the truth. So being able to talk about the stress of maybe not even talk about it, but having that third party and knowing that they can talk about the stress of it, it releases some kind of pressure on them, and they can triangulate, which is bringing three things into one, but relieving the pressure of the third. Sometimes triangulation's bad, sometimes triangulation's good.
How much of it is getting another person's opinion, and how much of it is just saying things out loud? And the reason I'm asking this is because
that's a good question.
I was thinking, sometimes I have these moments when I'm worried about something, it goes in my head, it's on the loop, like constantly. And then I'm calling my friend, let's say, for an advice. And I'm telling him or her the story. And even before I'm done, I don't even need to ask for advice at this point, because I just said it out loud. And suddenly everything is just much clearer.
It's your self-processing is what you're doing. When you put thoughts into words, you move from the reptilian fight or flight to language-based processing. So it slows things down. It turns something from what you felt and something into understood. So in therapy, sometimes we call this externalizing or cognitive organizing. So even if the other person says nothing alone, it reduces the intensity of what you're saying. It creates clarity because you're saying it out loud. It helps you realize what you actually think or feel. And that's why people say, I didn't realize that until I said it out loud. Because you're actually taking it from the fight or flight system into that executive brain functioning, and you're saying it out loud. That's why a lot of people can't talk about trauma because they physically cannot talk about it. So we do some things in hypnotherapy where you talk about it in a different language. It's a fascinating thing, but it's not necessarily a language. It's just words. So you're getting it out language wise. You're just talking random words, and then you're able to actually process it. I talk in this language of meadow. So if you were to tell me something very severe, I'll have you say, tell me in meadow. So I'll say, what did I do this morning? Meadow, 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 meadow. And so what's happening is from my thought process is I know what I'm saying, but I'm not saying the actual words. I'm still getting it out language wise. Yeah.
It's very interesting because I'm thinking about all the time I would be upset about something and the emotions are kind of clouding your sort of judgment or, processing. And then when you actually say it, it's like, well, why am I upset about this? That's cool. Now I know how it works.
Yeah, it's external processing. So you're getting it from the fight or flight to the executive functioning. That's why language is so important, and speaking your truth is so important to make sure that you get it out. And I think sometimes people, when they are traumatized or they're triggered or they're even going through a hard time, it gets caught in their voice, and they don't feel like they have a voice. So a lot of times when you're doing family therapy and there's people in the room, I always say, let's hear from you. Because sometimes people don't have the opportunity to share what they're feeling, or they feel like it's not important,
That's fascinating. How many times do we stew in our thoughts instead of actually saying it? I do that to my son, when he's sulking or he's upset. I prompt him to talk. But we're all different. And I love this, these stretch of chapters for giving us Violet, obviously her perspective. But then we also have Xaden, who seems very different. And we don't have his point of view. We don't have his POV when it comes to this particular situation.
Yeah.
But we do know that he carries a lot on his own. Like, he keeps secrets. He insists on keeping a lot of things to himself because that's important. We understand why. But what's interesting is that he seems to be fine with it. Like, he is not falling apart. We see Violet falling apart, slowly and struggling. But it seems to work for him. Like, what is he doing differently? Like, do you have a guess for that?
Well, he's not necessarily coping better. He's just coping differently. So he appears more contained, but he's doing a form of compartmentalizing. So he compartmentalizes and separates the emotion from the action in order to just function. And that can be very effective in high-risk situations and environments, but it also allows for clarity and decisiveness and control in the situation. But it comes at a cost, because what's not processed doesn't disappear. It's deferred. What's not processed doesn't go away. It just waits. And sometimes it builds. And it just waits for that time. So while Violet externalizes and seeks connection, Xaden's internalizing and maintaining control, but both are adaptive, but they both have limits and they both come at a cost.
And I also wonder if they are in a slightly different situation because, for example, Xaden still has Garrick. Like, Violet literally has nobody. Like, she has Imogen to kind of exchange some, but I think maybe Xaden and Garrick had more opportunities to talk. And also I wonder if this existence became second nature to Xaden. And maybe that's why he was struggling. I mean, there were a lot of issues, obviously, him being together with Violet because of who she is, and she is General Sorrengail's daughter. But him letting her in is a struggle because he's so used to keeping everything, like all the secrets.
Well, talking to your friends or someone that has that connection with you is one of the most effective psychological tools we have, because people, they don't just listen, they help us think, like you were talking about before. They offer perspective and challenge our distortions and help regulate emotion simply just through their presence and being there.
Yeah.
And we're wired for co-regulation. Our nervous system stabilizes in connection. That's why connection is so important. So while it sounds simple, it's actually really deep rooted in how we function as human beings.
Yeah. I have a new respect. Respect? I don't know if that's the right word, but appreciation for Imogen actually in this situation. Because she totally calls it, right? When she gives her advice. She says Violet and Xaden cope with these things very differently. And it doesn't mean that if it works for Xaden, it works for Violet. It gives me a different perspective and Imogen as well, that she notices those things, like what's happening around her. And you know what? Honestly, dear listeners, talk to your friends.
Yeah.
It's annoying how effective it is.
Friends serve different purposes, right? We have some friends that are closer than others, and we have some friends that we just adore, but they just don't maybe have the same perspective as us. So it's good to get different perspectives, but it's always good to have the people that you know have been through what you've been through, or not necessarily been through it, but they can understand and just listen and be there, be that rock for you when all you need is a rock. You just need to process it yourself. Sometimes that's the most important.
Yeah.
That's what I like about you, Katya.
Oh, thank you. That's what I like about you. But to be honest, Catherine, when I talk to you, you do turn your professional side. It's quite funny.
I do?
I don't know if I said that before. Yeah, you do. But especially when I have some of my, new crazy ideas. And it made me laugh. We met up once, it was a few years ago. And I told you, I decided this is what I'm doing. This is my idea. And you just sat straight and you kind of just like, okay, yeah, well, tell me about it. It just made me laugh internally because I was like, uh-oh, intervention is required.
Sometimes people aren't ready to hear the truth. And sometimes you just need that encouragement. Like, I'm always encouraging you because no matter what you want to do, I am for it. Whether I want to do it or not, which usually I get roped into it at some point, at some given time. Sure, because I can't say no to you. Here we are,
and I appreciate
a year later.
That.
Yeah, it's just that's sometimes what you do as a friend. You just have to listen and try to listen objectively. And in the back of my mind, I might be going, "What the heck is she saying?" But I don't want to judge immediately. I want to listen first. So that's why I kind of straighten up and go, "Okay, let's listen to what she has to say."
Yeah, but to be honest, and I know we are sort of going away from our topic, but there are so many people who are happy to give you warnings, to say, are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Because, XYZ, there are problems. There are not many people who are like, yeah, do it. Try. Why not?
Yeah.
You fail, you fail. You
Right.
learn something from this. Go for it. Might be the best idea ever. There's so many people who will be like,
So many. Well, because they all can see the bumps in the road. There are no crazy ideas, just crazy people. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. They're not crazy people. There are no crazy ideas. There are just ideas that haven't happened yet. And without those crazy ideas, or without those ideas, there's so many things in this world that wouldn't be here if people didn't have those. Like, can we fly? Airplanes today are nothing, but one day someone wanted to fly and they were like, right. There's so many things beyond what we think about that is so true and happens that I'm sure the people that have invented all these amazing things have been told no.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's very easy for me to name people who would not be built in a shuttle. I know a lot of them.
Right?
Yes.
I do have to know that people in my life that I know, if I was to say I was going to do something, they would have no qualms. They'd be like, if anyone's going to do it, that will be me.
So by the end of chapter 19, it feels like Violet reaches a point where she just can't carry it on her own anymore. It just has to come out. And we really see that in two moments in these chapters. The first one is with Rhiannon, where Violet finally shares what happened with Liam. And it's such a powerful scene. Like, Rebecca's writing is beautiful, and the audiobook performances are incredible. Both the Rebecca's Layers and the dramatized
version.
And the dramatized version, yes. I tear up every time I listen to it, honestly. And also Rhiannon's reaction, right? The shock, the grief for Liam, but also for Violet, right? It's just that she knows that Violet is still processing and she's still carrying. The emotional explosion in that moment feels very real. Did this scene make you pause as well?
Yeah, this is actually the one. This is kind of my moment of the scene of the of the book. And it's incredibly real. It feels like what we're seeing is that we might, well, psychologically you would call it more of an emotional overflow. So Violet has been containing that trauma or that traumatic experience without processing it. And remember what I said, what you don't process waits for you. So eventually it just broke through. It just breaks through. And when it does, it often comes out intensely and sometimes not in the safest or most controlled way. But also there's something important happening. So this is the beginning of that integration. She's starting to put words to something that's been held internally. And Rhiannon's response matters. Being witnessed in that kind of pain can be profoundly regulating, even if it's messy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because you feel seen, right? You feel heard at that moment. You know, even though Rhiannon can't really offer her any words of, support or anything, but yeah.
But it was a safe space for her to feel and to be heard, and that gave her that emotional regulation that she needed, just to be accepted. And Rhiannon just held that space for her.
Yeah.
No judgment, no, no opinions, no authority, no advice. It was just holding the space.
Yeah. And then we have another scene with Mira. You can really feel that Violet wants to open up and she wants to share the truth. Probably with somebody who she completely trusts, right? Like not a random person. And not just because Mira would be actually very good asset in this fight, but also because like Violet needs her support. Like she needs somebody to lean on, and Mira is that person. Well, at least that's my take. Like she's strong, she's steady. And actually her reaction fits her character very well. When Violet tells her, she doesn't wobble at that moment.
Yeah, she's not like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's just, wyvern? What? Like, that's just not true, right? And from her perspective, Violet is just under a lot of pressure.
I was a bit surprised, actually, that she responded that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought she had more insight than that, or more questionable nature. That... I thought she had more of a questionable, nature, but maybe she's just going with the flow.
I wonder if there are just some people who are, I don't want to call Mira closed-minded, but there are very people who follow
the rules
she's
straight.
Not Dane, but
no, she's not Dane, but she's very she just believes what she's told.
Yes, yeah.
And she trusts the authority, and she trusts that they're telling her the truth, and she doesn't question the authority, which has kept her alive this whole time, which is great. It's just, I just thought more of her for some reason.
Yeah, I suppose why would she question it, right? Like, the only reason Violet believes is because she saw it. She probably would have had similar reaction, but then again,
maybe
if Mira told her, like I've seen, but then again, she doesn't tell Mira I've seen it. She tells Mira, what if, right?
Yeah.
And a similar thing is if I tell you, like, what if, in the wars that are raging in our world, they are actually using dragons.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't just completely go, that's ridiculous. Or you're not well.
Yeah, you're better than me. I'd probably be like touching your forehead.
But remember, I deal with people's realities and their truths all day long. So I tend to live in their world because that's their world.
Yeah.
It's their world. That's how they live. We all have a reality that's not necessarily the same as others. So
yes, absolutely. Well, do you think Mira keeps underestimating Violet? This is one of the reasons that she reacts to Violet's suggestion, like, oh, she's just a little sister.
Yeah.
Kind of dismisses her a little bit.
I think it's maybe less about underestimating Violet. It's more about that cognitive protection. So Mira has a framework of how the world works, and what Violet is suggesting doesn't really fit into that. So her brain doesn't, her brain does what many of our brains do under threat. It dismisses the information rather than restructuring the reality. And there's also a protective element. So if Violet is overwhelmed, then Mira can respond as a stabilizer. But if Violet is right, then everything Mira believes about safety collapses. So this is less about trusting Violet and more about being able to tolerate what the truth would mean. And I don't think they're ready for that yet. Clearly she's not, or else she would have engaged or entertained that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to see what Mira's reaction would be in the future, right? Whether she would stand by their mother or whether.
Well, their
Because
mother
Mira,
knows.
well, yeah, mother knows. Yeah.
So,
Also, Mira doesn't know about Brennan. That's another thing.
right, that would kill me if I was Violet. I was thinking that, like, she wants to tell her so bad. And could you imagine? I just couldn't imagine not being able to tell a sibling.
Yeah.
That would just be that would kill me.
Because she's standing there, right? And she's like, in her head, Brennan's alive, Brennan is alive, Brennan is alive. And then she even reflects on like how close Mira and Brennan were growing up. Okay, well, now let's talk about the bad guys. I mean, and not in a fun way, bad guys.
Okay.
I think by now there is no doubt that Markham is also pure evil. Not in the same way as Varrish, who is essentially sadistic, but to me they represent two types of control. Like Varrish is a behavior control, you know, it's punishments and restriction of movement. He even arranges for Xaden to have those duties while Violet is visiting. Probably has buddies there in Samara, or I don't know how. But Markham is different, right? Because he controls information, and he controls information by flipping the Boromir narrative. He does it also in a very kind of kind way. Like with Varrish, you just know. Like nothing he does is helpful to anybody. While Markham is almost like this sort of fatherly figure. He kind of gives advice and he says we're trying to protect people and, you know, Boromir citizens are trouble and all that. Oh, by the way, what do you think about Taryn's way of dealing with Varrish? Was it satisfying?
Yes, I thought, well, I was ready for him to kind of follow through with biting off the neck.
Really?
But yeah, I was like, oh, nobody died? Okay, Taryn, all right. I thought that was effective.
Yeah, Taryn, he's a massive dragon, right? And he should be carrying some weight and he should be able to interfere and protect Violet. But also, I am a little bit confused about it. Why can't they say that Andarna is unavailable, that Andarna is in a dreamless sleep? I know they're trying to protect little dragons, the Feathertails. But if they just say that Andarna sneaked out, bonded Violet, and that's it, and now she is in a dreamless sleep and she's growing, they don't have to say anything about Signet, about the gift that Andarna gave to Violet. You know, like, what is the point of hiding Andarna? I don't have an answer. I don't know why they're doing it.
Why they're hiding Andarna from...
Well, why can't they say? Because Varrish wants to see Andarna. And Violet can say, sorry, she's in a dreamless sleep, because that's the truth. She's in a dreamless sleep. But for some reason, they're hiding that. And we know that the leadership knows about dreamless sleep because we get all these snippets from Kaori's journals. And
Does it tell us later? Does it help explain it later?
No.
Maybe they just wanted to enforce the power and control.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because the big thing was the signet, right? Not the signet, but the gift, the power that Andarna was given. But they don't have to tell. They don't have to explain that.
Plus it went away, right? Freezing time.
Yeah. But I think so originally, right, they were saying don't tell it to anybody because then they will start bonding the babies. Humans will start bonding the babies and draining the power and basically killing them. But if they don't release that information, then nobody will know, and that's fine. They're safe. Anyway.
Good question.
And then we have another type of control. Or maybe not, actually. I don't know. This one's for you to decide, Catherine.
Okay.
And I am talking about Sloane here and how Violet handled her. Because, so Sloane is rejecting all the help from Violet and Imogen, which I'm not sure why Imogen gets a cold shoulder, but, you know. And Violet essentially forces her hand, right, by using Liam's letters as leverage. Can we consider that control?
Yes, we can absolutely understand this as a form of control. Even though Violet's intention is to help Sloane, she removes Sloane's autonomy in the process. Psychologically, autonomy is a core need. So when it's taken away, even for someone's benefit, it can feel intrusive or even violating. So this becomes a really complex ethical moment.
Is there still help if the person doesn't get to choose? Is it really support if it's forced?
So we would say, from a psychological perspective, support that overrides autonomy, it risks becoming coercive even if the outcome is positive. So there's a fine line.
I know it's an ethical question more than anything, but do you think the outcome is enough to justify the method? Is this motivation or manipulation?
Good questions. I can think of so many scenarios where this happens, and I think the key difference between motivation and manipulation is choice. Motivation supports someone's agency and encourages them, and they still decide, whereas manipulation sometimes limits or bypasses that choice, often using pressure or leverage or emotional stakes. So in this case, Violet is helping, but she's also applying pressure in a way that restricts Sloane's freedom to choose. And that's where it shifts into something more complex than just support. In this case, though, I think Sloane doesn't understand the full picture. And so I know her intention is good, and her intention is to keep her alive. And it's almost that she has more information than Sloane could ever have. So using these tactics are not ethically necessarily giving her choice, but she is making a choice in the long. Remember how we talked about not making a choice is a choice.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Yes, she's manipulating her and she's keeping her alive. So looking from the outside looks great, but when you're in it, you're not feeling that choice. You're not feeling that you have a choice in the matter. She does have a choice in the matter. She doesn't get the letters. She doesn't follow through. If she really hated Violet for that, she doesn't have the whole truth. She doesn't have the whole story.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of decide. So that first question, does the outcome justify the method? If she stays alive, it does. If she dies, no, it doesn't. Right?
In many books that I've read, there is kind of similar situation when the main character is motivated, or the side characters are trying to motivate the main character through something. When the main character just doesn't want to fight anymore, they're tired, they're exhausted, and then the side character will prod them somehow, either through their temper or through some sort of
connection.
Think about your loved ones,
to the family.
Something. Yeah. And when you read it, you don't think of it as something negative. Right. You don't think, oh, the person's making a choice. You don't know how many times we've been pushed by, our parents, family, friends, when we are, ready to give up. And we're being pushed into working harder, fighting for something. And at the end, we get our reward for pushing through.
Yes.
And, we say thank you to those people. But it's just difficult to, I suppose, know at that point.
Moment.
Yeah, like you're supposed to know, is it the time to give up, let go, cut the losses, or I don't know. Nobody knows. So fingers crossed for Sloane.
Come on, Sloane, please stay alive.
Yeah, you're still waiting for them to become besties, right?
I am. I haven't given up hope yet.
No.
Sloane's going to know the truth.
Yeah. Again, talk about side characters. Again, Eric keeps reminding me about Liam. I don't know why. I never noticed that before. It's only like analyzing it. Like how similar he is with Liam. Again, winning every challenge, basically being unbeatable and being this huge guy like Liam was.
I still don't believe in that whole character development.
Oh, yeah.
That's no reason to kill off someone loyal and faithful this whole time.
I think this is where we are going to leave our discussion for today and move on to our favorite segment. Who needs therapy? Who needs therapy today?
I mean, again, all of them. But if I had to choose, I would say Violet, not because she's weak, but because she's carrying too much too alone. And she's functioning, but she's not processing. And over time, that leads to burnout, emotional dysregulation, and eventually collapse. So what she needs isn't strength. It's processing. She needs the space to be supported.
Yeah, I agree. Tough moments for Violet. Thank you, Catherine. And before we wrap up, let's look at our minds over magic moments for this week. The moments from these chapters that really stayed with us and made us feel. Can you pick one?
I
You can
think
pick more than one.
so many. No. Well, two of them. One of them was when she was trying to tell Mira, and it just really stuck with me that Mira responded in that way. I was like, I don't get it. I thought Mira was a little bit more curious than that, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment of the conversation with Rhiannon. So because it's the first time we really see the weight that Violet's been carrying, that grief, that trauma, the responsibility come into the open. Mm-hmm. And it's messy and it was painful and it wasn't perfectly resolved, but it was real. And psychologically, those are often the moments where healing actually begins.
I think for me, it's the conversation with Imogen. I just love everything about about that scene, starting with, Imogen pushing her boundaries. When Violet's like, oh, are we friends now? She's like, no, like, I'm giving you like this moment and you can talk now. And also giving Violet the harsh truths about, like, if you thought things were going to be easy with Xaden, you were lying to yourself. That was good. And then the whole battle axe in the armoire. It's like, what was that? Imogen's like, right. I told you Imogen's one of my favorite characters.
She's lovely.
She's like, I'm not discussing my love life with you. I have an actual friend for this. And then also, like, how she tells Violet that, your friends need you too. Because Violet is so focused on things that's happening with her. And we do that. We do that a lot. If you're going through a stressful time, quite often you just end up focusing on that and then forget that your friends need you too. It's not about you getting help from them. It's also that you are still their friend and you should be helping them. Okay, well, that's it for today. Next episode, we are diving back into Iron Flame and discussing chapters 21 to 25, where we see what RSC is really about.
Follow us on Instagram at Minds Over Magic or email us at mindsovermagicpodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, or Romantasy Rex.
Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share with your fellow magic-minded friends. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments what you think about these chapters.
And until next time, keep your mind sharp and your heart open.
Bye-bye!